think you would start? So we'll talk about the tongue. So some students have asked me to convince them anatomically that the tongue is powerful. So let's see. Now, the very first interesting thing about the tongue is if you look at the tongue this way, and let's talk about the muscles of the tongue. So the muscles of the tongue is extrinsic, meaning those muscles are outside the tongue, and intrinsic. The intrinsic muscles you can remember easily by what I call LVP, which is longitudinal, vertical, and transverse. Okay, the extrinsic muscles you can remember easily with what I call GPS house. And G is genioglossus, P is halatoglossus, S is styloglossus, and H is hyoglossus. Now, together, so there are four of this. The longitudinal is divided into superior and inferior. So if you look at extrinsically, the tongue has four muscles intrinsically, and it has four muscles extrinsically. And if you compare it with the eye, if you remember, the eye has 6 extrinsic muscles and about 3 intrinsic muscles. So the tongue is as muscular as the eye. It's quite powerful, isn't it? The other interesting thing is all of the muscles extrinsically are supplied by the hypoglossal nerve, except P, halatoglossus, which is supplied by the vagus nerve. Good. Now, if we've talked about how powerful the tongue is muscular, let's look at the supply of the tongue. So I'm going to clean this, and start again. Now let's look at the nerves supplying the tongue. Now the tongue, you can remember the nerve supplying it if you divide the tongue into anterior 2/3 and posterior 1/3. That's one. The other thing is we need to consider the modalities of the tongue. Now the first is test, which we divide into bitter, sweet, salty, and sour. So I'll task the students to try and remember what part of the tongue is involved in testing. Generally, bitter is usually the posterior aspect of the tongue. Now, the other modality is general sensation. And here, you talk about pain, you talk about pressure, you talk about temperature, and the likes, hot, cold. These are very important in our test. Food, the entire food industry depend on this. Good. So you see, the tongue is powerful. Don't you agree?
Yes.
Good. So now let's look at the nerve supply. Now, the interesting thing about the tongue is, so if you remember the modalities, taste and general sensation. Now, posteriorly, taste and general sensation is dealt by the glossopharyngeal nerve. So one of the things I tell the students to remember, whenever you think of the tongue, why it's powerful, it's supplied by 3 nerves, 5, 7, 9. So taste and general sensation is handled by the ninth cranial nerve, which is the glossopharyngeal. It's easy to remember because from the name glossopharyngeal, the pharynx is at the back of the throat. So that solves that. Now, however, when it comes to taste in the anterior two-third, taste is subserved by the facial nerve, which is the seventh cranial nerve, while general sensation is subserved by the fifth cranial nerve, which is the trigeminal nerve. Now, if you look at just the amount of things that we can do with the tongue, you would agree with me that the tongue is indeed powerful. I will stop this teaching if the students agree that the tongue is powerful. Do you guys agree that the tongue is indeed powerful? 8 muscles, 3 nerves, 4 test modalities, about 5 general sensation modalities, isn't it? You require tongue to swallow, it has contribution in speech, isn't it? So if you guys agree, we'll end the teaching here.
We
So
agree.
the students agree.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.